Welcome and hello. My name is Diane Doddridge and I will be your host today on Viewpoint. We're very pleased to be able to interview another candidate. This gentleman is Mr. Robert Carabas from here in Tuolumne County. He is running against Mr. Bigelow for the seat as a Democrat for the California Assembly seat in District Number 5. Mr. Carabas, welcome. I look forward to our discussion today because I'd like to hear about your qualifications, your background, what you are emphasizing in your campaign, and I know that all our viewers out there want to hear from you too.
Okay. Well, my parents were Greek immigrants, and so I've had the immigrant experience, and I've seen our society from the the American family side and from the Greek family side, because we had a very large community that we lived in. And my father was a barber in Great Falls, Montana, who died when I was 7. So life became pretty tough pretty quick. My mother had to improve her English so that she could get a job. And so I had a lot of jobs. My mother made aprons, and I sold them door to door for a couple of years. I was only 8 years old and a cute little kid, and I could sell anything. So I did pretty well at that. And I was a shoeshine boy in a shoeshine parlor, and as the years went by, pizza cook and a bellboy and a bus boy and a desk clerk and a night auditor, all those sorts of things. And I was lucky in high school, and later in high school, that I was able to get a job on the Great Northern Railway. So that was a union job, and so it paid, well, practically what the minimum wage is today. And I was able to save enough money to seriously think about going to college. And I managed to go to college, and I graduated from Berkeley in English, and went to work at Natomas Oil Company, which was a Fortune 500 oil company. It was the first California corporation, and we actually built or prepared the grounds for the town of Natoma while I was at Natomas. And when I was there, I was doing research. I did research on all sorts of acquisition candidates that came to the company. I was in the corporate development group, and I did research on oil refineries, forest products, Western coal, anything that they pointed me at. And
where were you living at this time?
I was in Berkeley, California.
Berkeley.
We lived there for 30 years and moved up here about 16 years ago. I built a home. Then from doing research, I was then moved into the Treasury, where I organized the insurance program, which was really an organizational question. I mean, I didn't actually create any sort of insurance. We had brokers that took care of that, but I organized it because it was badly organized. And then I was told to look into credit, and I did that. And so I became the credit manager because
for this same oil company.
For the same oil company. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what happened was we had an attorney who would write the contracts and come up with good ideas for working out credit environments so we could sell the oil, but then he didn't like to get on planes. And so I discovered, reading the contracts, that there weren't any signed. And what happened was some of the clients were actually people we had to be concerned about. So I got the contract signed, and I implemented the credit policies, and one of the companies went bankrupt, and I had all of their oil in my hands. In fact, I had more of their money than they owed us. So they made me credit manager overnight, and so then I wrote policy for the rest of the company. And I was involved in the creation of oil derivatives, although I didn't specifically participate. I was in the Treasury that was working on it, so I got to see the document flow. And so I understand derivatives to a certain extent, and I got to do a certain amount of arbitrage. So
you have some finance and insurance background.
Sure, yeah, I've had a certain amount of that. And then I had done fairly well buying real estate in Berkeley, which was very, very inexpensive at that time. and I was able to go back to school after a number of years, and study fine art. And I won a.
That was a switch.
Yeah, it was a real switch. I had always, in the back of my mind, I'd always wanted to try, and I was reasonably good. I was reviewed by the San Francisco Critic. I won a scholarship to Skowhegan, which is a summer institute where top flight artists come and lecture and stuff, and they visit your studio.
Where is
give you
that?
critique. That's in Maine.
Maine.
Yeah. So it was
A new career.
Yeah, that's my background, and I think that well, and then I did that for 20 years, and I did carpentry on the side to help support my habits, and then we moved up here, and I built a studio house, one for my wife and one for me, and
I know you're
small
both
house.
artists.
We're both artists, right? So,
Now, are you still painting?
I haven't painted for a couple of years. I had an experience one evening. I was complaining to my kids about global warming, and they said, stop talking about it, go do something about it. So I started writing letters to the editor.
Good segue.
Yeah, it was a good segue. And then I ended up getting involved in politics because I'm very concerned about that subject. And then also I have a certain amount of understanding of what's been happening in the economy, and I'm very troubled by what's happened to how Americans perceive their own economy and government and how it functions, and how people are kind of being left behind. And so would like to really.
So you really tapped into that. What we're seeing now manifest itself in some ways as some anger and backlash to what's been happening.
Yeah, I think that
You have an understanding.
Yeah, I think that people are very, very frustrated because wages haven't been growing. During the right after the Second World War, we had a very egalitarian period where people came back from the war and they really wanted to build a great society, and so we made going to college inexpensive, especially for vets, and unions were very strong then, and they kept wages growing with the economy. And then we hit a period where we decided that it was about the Reagan period where he convinced us that we should go toward Reaganomics, which has become free market economics now.
So let me ask you then, some of these problems that you speak of, that you see occurring now, isn't the free market economy supposed to solve those problems?
That was the idea. The idea was that if we deregulated the economy, that it would take off and it would solve problems. And we've kind of bought into this idea of free market economics, and you have to understand it's like believing in the Easter Bunny. There is no such thing as free market economics. What we have is we have a society where we have an economy, and of course we all want to have a robust economy. And then we have our people, we the people, our society. And then in the middle is our government. And we have demonized our government during the last 30 years in favor of this idea that there is something that's above even government, which is free market economics. And
I still hear that in the debates.
Right, and the problem is, of course, is the government. If government is even-handed and careful in the way it responds to the economy, the economy then functions well. And if it, at the same time, if it's fair and careful with the society, then the society prospers as well. And the idea of free
It's a balancing act?
Yeah, it's a real balancing act, and that's why it's so important for people to participate in government, because we haven't done a very good job of that. We've bought into this idea that we can kind of look the other way and let the corporate world take care of us, and the corporate world has a function, and that function is to make. I mean, I worked in the corporate world, and our job was to make money, and we did some things that that we had to do to stay on the cutting edge of things, or you fall behind, and so that is the goal of corporations, and people shouldn't believe even for a moment that we were concerned about the price of your fuel oil or your gasoline. We were concerned about how much of a profit we made on it.
Let me stop you there and ask you just real quickly, do you not believe that corporations are people?
No, I don't buy into that idea at all. I think that that's a real fallacy. And in fact, I think that there are a lot of issues that we spend a huge amount of time in our society talking about that are actually, we are actually intended to spend our time talking about these issues. And I think of them as kind of like fake issues, like immigration. Now, it's a very important topic, and it's something that we
And your
should
parents
resolve.
were immigrants.
And my parents were immigrants, so I understand that, and I believe that that can be taken care of and should be taken care of. But what we have blown this completely out of proportion. I mean, we've failed to follow the reality that it represents only 1/3 of 1% of our population. And yet, in terms of the political conversation, you would think it was the most important thing that was happening in our society. Gay marriage, for example, is 1% of our population, and we act as though, my gosh, it's going to bring down marriage. And I've been married, 47 years, and it hasn't had any impact on my marriage. I suspect it hasn't changed yours much either. We have also all these topics that really represent less than 1% of our population. We're not paying attention to ones that from my point of view, having been a poor kid who struggled, I understand the value of money. And being in a corporation, I understand, and a credit manager, I understand that money, the good side and the bad side of money. So you have to be careful with this stuff.
It's not the end-all, be-all of everything?
Well, you can make it that way, but in America, it's been really problematic in that one of the things that we all should be concerned about is jobs and wages in this country. Now that's impacting 99% of us. I mean, and wages have to be living wages. Without living wages, you can't have that healthy society that I've been talking about.
And that is a concern.
And that is a major concern, and I think that is the anger that we are seeing in our society, is that people are falling behind. I mentioned that for 35 years after World War II, when we were really struggling to make an egalitarian society, the wages grew with the economy. For the last 35 years, since we've embraced the idea of free market economics, wages of the lowest paid workers in America haven't grown at all.
Yeah.
And until California just passed, they raised the minimum wage a little, up to $10.10 from $7.25. But I mean, for 35 years, we basically had been withholding about $20,000 a year from the lowest paid workers in America. That's where we were at, and so that is money that people don't have to participate in our community, and money that therefore isn't spent in our community, isn't spent in our small business. And so that it not only harms the individuals, but it also harms the community. And so that's one of the reasons that one of my issues is really pressing to get the minimum wage raised to $15 an hour.
You see that being done incrementally?
Yeah, I think that has to be done incremental, because that's been one of the big failures. We've failed to get it to follow growth in the economy, which is what we really should be doing, because why shouldn't the productivity of our economy profit our society?
Some cities are doing that.
Yeah, some states.
Seattle, San Francisco.
Yeah.
I think Los Angeles is considering it or has done it, so some of the larger urban areas.
Yeah. Yeah, and then another issue that crops up for me very powerfully is healthcare, because getting to the point in my life where I have a lot of friends who are in that Asian population, I see a lot of people who are struggling to meet bills. I see that even with young people, trying to have a child. I mean, today, the major indicator that a newly married couple are going to go bankrupt is having a child.
Is that right?
Yeah,
I had not heard that.
Yeah, it's really shocking, and a lot of the problems in our society are fueled by the cost of healthcare. Now, one province in Canada started a single-payer system. It was so successful, so inexpensive, took care of all the citizens of that province that Canada adopted it ultimately. And Canada covers all of their citizens. They have better outcomes than the United States for all of those citizens. and they do it at half the cost.
There is a waiting period sometimes for certain, like for instance, if you need a hip or a knee,
Yeah, well,
maybe.
If you don't have an insurance in this country, or you're a poor person, you have long waiting
Exactly.
as well. And also, there's a fallacy in that the notion that you have to. There are long waiting times in Canada. There are long waiting times for ordinary care. Things that my wife has developed diabetes. Well, I mean, she made an appointment. She had to wait 2 months to get in to see the diabetes specialist. And the same is true in our in our healthcare system. We tend to think that we get care immediately. We get care immediately if we're really sick or we're injured. And the same thing is true in Canada. And so. And naturally, we have a very powerful.
Not to mention pharmaceuticals.
Oh, pharmaceuticals, yeah. I mean, one of the things that you do in a corporation is you buy your competitors, and then of course you have to pay for your competitors. You paid a high price for it, so you have to raise their products, and so they raise the prices on drugs constantly as they are acquired.
In our country.
In our country.
But Canada.
Yeah, and even worse. I mean, these companies are now they're leaving. What they're buying companies in other countries like Ireland. Pfizer is just bought a company and avoiding like $2 billion worth of taxes. So on one hand, they're making their money by overcharging for their drugs in the United States. I mean, you can buy the same drugs in Canada that we buy here in the U.S. for half the cost.
Yes.
So, we're not talking about a small amount of money. People misunderstand because it's kind of how much money we're spending is kind of hidden because the government is paying parts of it and we're paying parts of it, and the way the system works is that it hides the realities. But a middle class family of four here in the United States spends $16,000 a year on health care to take care of the family of four. Well, if you were to give half of that back, you're talking about $8,000 a year. That's $240,000 over a 30-year period. That's enough for that family to buy a very nice home in our region, certainly.
I've often wondered how corporations calculate that by raising their prices and joining together, buying one another out and becoming bigger and bigger and bigger and charging more, think they can continue to do that when 70% of what they sell is sold to consumers like us.
Yeah, well,
and if we don't have the money to purchase their products,
right? People are in fact struggling, and that's one of the reasons that people are so fearful, because I mean they see that their money isn't going far enough. We've cut taxes again and again and again, but we're all still paying the same amount of taxes, most ordinary people, and you should be asking why, because what we've done is the wealthiest people in the country, they've gone from 90% to, after all of the loopholes and stuff that they've created, to roughly 11%, 12%, 13%, and so
Mitt Romney, when he ran for president, was 14 or 15, something like that.
Yeah, and he purposely paid more on his income taxes because it was embarrassing that he could actually have been paying somewhere around 11%.
And Mr. Trump won't even let us see his tax
return.
return.
And the thing is what we've done is we've bent over backwards to take care of the wealthiest part of our economy,
Yes.
and that's what's happening. And this transfer of wages, because wages haven't grown, those wages haven't been collected by Americans. What's happened is those have gone to profits to the corporations, and they've redistributed it to their stockholders. And there's only about 8% of America really holds a reasonable amount of stock, and so again it profits the wealthiest people in our economy. So between healthcare and raising the minimum wage, we could have quite an impact on people's lives. When I was getting started in life, when I got done working at the end of the month, paid all of my bills. I was the only one that was working in our family. I had a quarter to a third of my earnings remaining. Today, with a family of four with two parents working, after they pay their bills at the end of the month, they are flat broke. That's on average here in America, and that's That's appalling. That's the reason that, the builders are sitting around looking for somebody to build for. They can't, because that family of four is paying so much for health care, or a member of the family is being paid sub-poverty wages and isn't able to really contribute to the family the way they'd like to. So we have to confront that. We have to rebalance. We have to understand that the government is not some great evil, but people have to recognize that we have to put the right kind of pressure on our government so that it, again, goes to a much more balanced attitude, because this whole idea of free market economics is it's really corporate greed. I mean, if we called it corporate greed, nobody would support it, but that's synonymous with the whole idea of free market economics.
We're running out of time here. I want to be sure to touch on your feelings about global warming, or climate change as we've come to refer to it more now. The reality of it and how it can touch our lives, or our children or grandchildren's lives.
Right, and the thing is the fossil fuels industry, of course, doesn't want us to change this, and I was in the fossil fuels industry. They don't want to change our dependence on fossil fuels, carbon-based fuels, and that's, of course, what's causing global warming, our burning fossil fuels.
Well, some people disagree with that, but the fact remains it's pretty obvious now to most people that we do have a warming planet.
We certainly do have a warming planet, and one of the problems we have is that because of their dependence on the fossil fuels industry for campaign contributions, a lot of our politicians refuse to recognize global warming.
You wonder if they really maybe do, but they just can't say it.
They know they will be replaced if they go against, if they speak out, strongly against.
So it's a job situation.
So it's a job situation. I mean, Tom McClintock, has been telling us for years that it's a hoax. There isn't a single earth science institution in the world. 97% of climate scientists tell us global warming is happening. Human beings are causing it. And that if we don't do something about it, humanity is literally at risk. Our great-grandchildren will really suffer. And Bigelow is, basically in that camp. He just simply keeps it under his hat. He doesn't really want to talk about it or touch it.
Is that right?
But
denier. He just.
I have to put him in the denier camp, because certainly he isn't going to stand up and say something about it. So, it's really a serious problem, and if you want to have it quantified for you, it's very easy to do that. You drive down our roads and you just look at the forest and you can see all the dead trees. Now, those pine trees have died because they've been attacked by beetles, and the population of beetles has multiplied, doubled every year during the warmest years that we've had. We're having more warm years, and the beetles have attacked the pines that are stressed because we've had a drought. And we have all these dead pines. Well, there are 12 or 13 million of them right now, just in our region. Okay, it's been reported that there are another 120 million that are at risk. 5
in my backyard.
Right, and to have them removed, if they're any reasonable size, they cost about $10,000 a piece. And to bring this really home, when you take 13 million trees and you try to remove them, you're talking about $13 billion. Or $120 billion if those other trees.
And you feel this can be traced back to global warming?
I think that it's. I've heard.
It's the heat and the drought.
I've heard people speak about beetle attacks in the past, but nothing like this. And you have to understand, we're just a small sector. Our region is relatively small. I mean, the number of pine trees that are dead in North America is 60 million acres of pine trees. You can get in an airplane in Missoula, Montana, and you can fly to the Yukon and never leave the dead forests below. I mean, you can just fly right over them all the way up there. And the problem is huge. And this is only in our region. And then the thing, that 35 years ago, we were warned that we were going to lose our forests, we were going to lose our snowpacks, we were going to face droughts. Now our scientists are saying 35 years more, and we're going to be confronted with multi-decade droughts. So we may have droughts that last 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, 35 years, and we're not at all prepared for that. And
what should we be doing?
Oh, well, I mean...
We're going to be running out of time here, and I need to have people
One of the things...
feel more hopeful.
Yeah, well, I mean, there is a lot of hope. Well, first of all, we can get rid of congressmen like McClintock and get somebody in there who is, like Doddridge, who will really work with the rest of Congress and push for national and international agreements so that we can confront this so we don't make it any worse. But the problems we currently face actually has a real upside for us. I mean, there is an opportunity to create all sorts of jobs around this. I mean, the fastest growing part of the American economy right now is the alternative energy industry. And we're not participating in it because basically we're pretending in our region that it's not happening. I mean, you can barely find a politician in our region who will actually stand up and say, it's a problem, it's a serious problem, we got to do something about it. And as a result, I mean, right now our general plan is being written by our supervisors, and they're basically representing the interests of developers. They're not representing the interests of the people in our region. I mean, you saw what happened with the Columbia thing. People were very frustrated, very angry about it, and so you find yourself in a situation where they are rewriting the general plan, but they're not rewriting the general plan confronting the issues that we are confronting.
Let me
and
ask
if we do
you,
that, we'll be able to...
You say confront it. What can we do? What can the people who are watching do or say or...
Well, they can elect me. I mean, I'll say a lot. I mean, you won't hear the end of it.
That's one thing.
That's one thing. And the other thing is to go to the trouble of, you can visit
going to the supervisors' meetings?
The NASA site and read about global warming. You can go to the NOAA site. You can go to the National Science Foundation has all sorts of literature. You can go to any university, college that you attended. You can contact them. Their earth science departments are just loaded with information. And first, you have to understand that it's a real problem, so that you will, fight for the kinds of issues that we really.
Well, we cannot. And I say this because I have grandchildren and great-grandchildren. I have 8 of them, and I look at them now and I think I cannot leave this mess that's confronting them.
Right.
I can't leave that to an 8-month-old. I mean, that's unconscionable, and so let's elect the right people.
I have 5 grandchildren myself,
yes.
and that's really what got me involved in all this stuff, and that's why I'm speaking out, and that's why I'm trying to get elected, is because it is the central issue to me.
Thank you so much.
So.
I really appreciate it. So we've covered some in-depth topics here. Mr. Carabas has filled us in on some facts and general knowledge about our economy and how it works and how it hasn't been working for the past 20 years or so for many of us. Global warming, healthcare. We've covered a lot of subjects. We hope you've enjoyed that. If you want to have more information, and you may call him, and he'll give you his number. It will also be on the video. Send you your phone number.
Well, I have I have to get out my card. I have a campaign card.
Do you have
maybe the best thing I could do is just could have you just put
yes,
it on
he will
video.
give it to our videographer, and we'll put it at the end of the video. Do you have an email address?
Yes, it's on this card.
Okay, we'll have the email address there as well.
And a website and a Facebook.
Thank you so much for watching today. I feel like I've been to a university lecture, and I'm all inspired to go out and become more of an activist, and I hope you are too. Thanks for watching. Bye.